afternoon, students. Welcome to our second lesson, economics. We are continuing with the inflation as our topic. So far, we are well versed with the definition of inflation. We say the persistent increase in the general price level of goods and services in an economy. In the previous session, we looked at also the types of inflation according to the causes and according to the state or intensity or rate of price increase. Then we have looked at the causes of inflation, and we have looked at the measures to control inflation. So we must be all versed with these ones, our previous lesson. Now, in today's lesson, we are going to look at the effects of inflation. Effects of inflation. When we look at effects of inflation, by the term effects, we mean the impact. Other words used, the results, what inflation brings about. So those are effects. And dear students, get to know that the effects of inflation are categorized into two. We have what we call the positive effects, and we have the negative effects. So, among the positive effects of inflation, when we are talking about positive effects, we are looking at the effects of mild inflation. In our previous session, we looked at mild inflation, the persistent increase in the general price level that takes place at a slow rate. When prices are increasing at a slow rate, it has advantages. It has positive effects. There is a good side of inflation when it is at a low rate. However, when inflation is at a high rate, what we call galloping inflation, it brings about negative effects. So, the positive effects are only experienced when we are having increase in prices at a slow rate, less than 10%. Less than 10%. But when the rate of inflation goes beyond 10%, then we have the negative effects setting in. So we are going to look at our effects, the effects of inflation based on these two categories. Effects of mild inflation are the positive effects. Then effects of galloping or hyperinflation, they are the negative effects. So let's begin by looking at the positive effects. So the first one is that it encourages forced saving. Forced saving. It encourages forced saving. Inflation forces people to save, and in order to go through the difficult times. So the increase in prices sometimes forces people to forego or to abstain from current consumption, and therefore they save for the future. Look at the situation when you are going to buy a kilo of sugar, and they tell you the quarter kilo of sugar, which has been 800, is now 1,000, and you are carrying only 800 shillings. You go back with your 800, and then you keep that money. You find you have not used that money. So it encourages forced saving. People are forced to save. And secondly, inflation encourages investment. It stimulates investment. During times of inflation, when prices are rising, the profits are also rising, which encourages businessmen to invest. It encourages people to invest and to start businesses. So it encourages investment, which is also inclusive in production. The other effect of inflation, which we can say number 3, it encourages entrepreneurship. It encourages entrepreneurship. It encourages the development of entrepreneurial skills. How does inflation encourage entrepreneurship? During times of inflation, the prices are rising, and this implies rising profits, which encourages people to start businesses. That is entrepreneurship. The other way is that some people who are employed find that their salaries are no longer enough to meet their needs at home. So they start side businesses, which results into development of entrepreneurial skills. Then, number 4, it encourages borrowing. It encourages borrowing. Or you can say this point as borrowers gain. So inflation enables borrowers to gain. Borrowers gain in real terms. You borrow money to invest when it has high value. By the time you pay back that money, it has lost the value. So it means you have gained. For example, when you get 1 million today, you borrow 1 million today. When you can buy a car, you get the 1 million, you are able to buy the car. Then, after like 5 years or 10 years, that money, the money has lost value. By the time you pay back the money, it can only buy a gold. So during the period of inflation, it helps the borrowers. The borrowers gain in real terms. So this encourages people to borrow money and use it, other than just keeping it idle. And the other one is that it promotes industrialization. It promotes industrialization. Inflation encourages the establishment of import substitution industries. These industries are established to produce goods which were formerly being imported. So as these goods become more and more expensive, people are encouraged to start producing them within the country. So at the end of the day, we get more and more industries being established in the country. So it promotes industrialization. And the other point we can look at is that it encourages labor mobility. It encourages labor mobility. It encourages labor mobility. Labor mobility is the movement of labor. The ease with which labor can move from one occupation or one geographical area to another. During inflation, the cost of living is always rising. So the rising cost of living encourages labor to move from areas where it is earning less to those areas where it is earning more money in order to meet the cost of living. So at the end of the day, labor moves from an area or from one occupation where it is poorly paid to an occupation where it is higher paid. So this increases labor productivity and labor efficiency, as labor is better paid. It helps an economy to recover from a depression. So inflation helps an economy to recover from a depression. A depression in economics simply means a period of low economic activities, a period of stagnation characterized by low aggregate demand for goods and services, low production, low investment. So during a period of depression, inflation, that slow increase in prices stimulates aggregate demand, which encourages investment, and as a result, economic activities increase, and hence the economy recovers from a depression. And the other effect of inflation is that it increases government revenue. It increases government revenue. During times of inflation, government revenue increases. How? This is because the profits of traders increase and government imposes taxes on those profits of the traders. So at the end of the day, government gets more revenue because of the increased investment and increased profits of traders. The other positive effect of inflation is that it encourages hard work. It encourages hard work. As prices increase, the commodities become more expensive, which forces people to work hard in order to be able to afford those commodities. So as they work hard, they produce more goods, and this results into economic growth. So it encourages hard work, and this stimulates economic growth in the country. So briefly, those are some of the effects. Maybe lastly, to make it 10, is that it increases employment opportunities. During times of inflation, the profits increase of traders. These profits are plowed back, which results into expansion of enterprises. As enterprises expand, more jobs are created during the period of inflation. As long as the inflation is at a low rate, we get these positive effects. And I emphasize the positive effects are for mild inflation. Mild has another name, creeping inflation. Inflation at a low rate, it has the positive effects. Now, you may be asked at the positive effects of inflation, or they may simply ask you what are the effects of mild inflation, where you are expected to give these positive effects. As long as you see effects of mild inflation, please give only the positive. These are effects given directly to you. Now let's go to the negative effects of inflation. The negative effects of inflation are also called adverse effects. We have that other word that is used, adverse effects of inflation. Sometimes we call them negative implications of inflation. And as I said, these ones are for basically hyperinflation, inflation at a high rate, where prices are increasing at a very fast rate. So, one of the effects of hyperinflation is that it worsens the unemployment problem. It worsens the unemployment problem. How? During times of inflation, workers demand for higher wages, which makes the use of labor, intensive technology, to be more expensive. So the investors, the employers, resort to use of capital-intensive methods. They begin using machines in order to produce goods instead of employing more and more people. Somebody who has been employing 100 men to dig instead thinks about buying a tractor, whereby the tractor does, one tractor can do work of more than 100 men. So the 100 men become unemployed. So during times of inflation, farmers resort to use of capital-intensive methods of production, which employ less labor, and as a result, the labor is unemployed. So that's how inflation leads to unemployment. Then also you should be aware that those farms that cannot afford, to meet the rising cost of production close down, and the people are exposed to the unemployment problem. The second point is that it worsens the balance of payment problem. It worsens the balance of payment problem of the country. How? And when we talk about balance of payment, dear students, we mean the difference between the country's earnings from abroad and its expenditure abroad. Here we are looking at both visible and invisible imports and the exports in a given period of time. So you find that during the period of inflation, the country's earnings from abroad reduce. How do they reduce? Inflation makes the exports very expensive. So the demand for exports reduces because these exports become less competitive on the world market. So the balance of payment problem occurs in that we earn less from our exports. Then on the other hand, inflation makes imports cheaper. So people buy more of the imports, which results into high expenditure abroad. And this worsens the balance of payment problem as we spend more money abroad compared to what we are earning from abroad. So at the end of the day, inflation worsens our balance of payment problem. Let me try to localize it. As the goods, for example, as our sugar, as our rice, as our matoke becomes more and more expensive, you find that people now begin preferring imported goods. They begin buying rice, Kipa rice, maybe from Tanzania, Kipa matoke, I don't know from where, Kipa whatever, instead of buying our own goods. So we find that as a country, we are spending more money abroad than what we are earning. And look at the situation where our matoke is very expensive. The foreigners will not come buy them. If our coffee is very expensive, if our things are very expensive, the foreigners look for cheaper goods from other countries. So our exports lose the market, and our imports increase. Our imports increase, and we get the balance of payment problem. Inflation also widens income inequalities. It widens income inequalities. It widens income inequalities. Income inequality is the uneven distribution of income, the discrepancy in the income distribution. You find the rich people, during the times of inflation, they become richer because their incomes increase. The landlords, the traders, they are able to revise their charges. Landlords are able to revise their rent upwards. Businessmen, they increase their profits, and therefore they earn more income. But when you look at the fixed income earners, the salary earners, the pensioners, their incomes do not increase at the same rate at which prices are increasing. So at the end of the day, the income inequalities widen. The poor people, the salary earners, pensioners, they become poorer because their incomes do not increase at the rate of increase in prices. While the variable income earners, the businessmen, the landlords become richer and richer during inflation. So we get the income inequalities widening. And then also it increases social evils. When we talk about social evils, in the cell, we mean those crimes, okay? Those bad things that are done because of prices being higher, because of prices rising day and night. For example, there are evils like hoarding of commodities, okay? Corruption, okay? So you find people resort to those crimes, prostitution, in order to survive during the hard times of inflation. You find that the salary that the person is earning is not enough for that person to buy food for the children at home. So you find a worker who has been honest resorting to corruption. You find a worker stealing, somebody going with some, maybe if the person is working in the kitchen at school, but going with some food in the pocket, some portion, just to supplement the salary. So these evils are committed just for people to survive during the hard times of inflation. So it increases social evils, those crimes, just because people want to survive. Then the other one is people are straining in order to cope with the rising cost of living. So people are straining during the times of inflation. They are straining in a bid to cope with the rising cost of living. You find people are overworked. Somebody thinking day and night on how to use 1,000 in order to go through the day. Yet the 1,000 can no longer even buy a quarter a kilo of what? Of rice. So you find that people are strained, and this leads to you find mental problems. You find people talking. You find somebody talking alone on the street just because of the pressure of the increase in prices of commodities. The other one is that inflation, the other negative effect of inflation, it discourages investment. It discourages investment. Inflation discourages investment. Now, inflation discourages investment. High rate of inflation results into increase in the cost of production, which reduces the profits of investors. So it discourages investors because it creates fear of making losses. The costs become so high that it is difficult to recover the money which you have put in. So at the end of the day, investment is discouraged. The other one is that it leads to industrial unrest. Industrial unrest. To put it in another way, inflation creates hardships on the side of the workers, which makes them not to be contented with what they are earning. It makes the current earnings of the workers insufficient, not enough. So at the end of the day, the workers engage in strikes, demonstrations, just in order to acquire, in order to demand for higher wages. They become restless. That's what we call industrial unrest. Workers resorting to strikes, demonstrations. Workers begin dodging to work because they feel that what they are earning is not enough for them to survive. And all this is due to inflation. Related to this is that inflation, it makes the government unpopular. Inflation makes government unpopular. It increases government unpopularity. Somebody will say it reduces the popularity of the government. Popularity of government. It makes government unpopular. Okay, makes government unpopular. Or it causes political unrest. During times of inflation, people are going through hardships. The cost of living is rising, and because of this, it makes people to hate government for failure to control prices of commodities. Inflation creates shortage of goods, which make people unhappy with the way government is handling the situation. And at the end, we get political unrest, political instability. Demonstration is what? Because of the rising cost of living. The other effect is that it discourages lending. It discourages lending. It discourages lending. When we are looking at the positive effects, we have said it encourages borrowing. That is positive. But now here, it is difficult for somebody to lend money when money is losing value. It is difficult for me to lend you my 1 million today when you can buy a car. Because in 5 years, if you are going to pay me in 5 years, by the time of the 5 years, it can't even buy a boat. So lending is discouraged. Simply because the lenders lose in real terms. By the time the money is paid back, it has lost much of its former value. Similar to this is that inflation discourages. It discourages saving. It discourages saving. During times of inflation, money is losing value at a very fast rate. So people are discouraged from keeping their money in the bank because of the way it loses value. They prefer consuming their money when it still has value. Besides, during times of inflation, people spend more money. You go to buy food, you go to the market with 50,000, you find you have used all the 50,000. Nothing is left. Just to buy food, tomatoes, onions, 50,000 you have used it. So at the end of the day, you are left with nothing to save. So inflation discourages saving. And the other thing is to collapse of some farms, especially the wind farms, which cannot meet the cost of production, they close. So inflation leads to collapse of some farms. Because of the rising cost of production, they are not able to cover the cost of production, and therefore it results to. Then the other one is it leads to consumption of poor quality goods, which lower standard of living. Farmers find it very difficult to maintain the quality of goods because of the rising cost of raw materials. They resort to producing poor quality goods. Even the people can't afford. So you find that during times of inflation, somebody was having food from a nice hotel, changes and begins having lunch from just a small restaurant where the quality may not be as good as the food eaten from the hotel. So at the end of the day, there is consumption of poor quality goods, which lower the standard of living of the individuals. There are other points to consider. For example, inflation leads to brain drain. I want to talk about this point. It's very important. Inflation leads to brain drain. Brain drain. Brain drain. It's a very important point. It leads to brain drain. This is, we are having lockdown, but before lockdown, if you passed by Ministry of Internal Affairs, you will find very many people trying to process travel documents, passports, because they want to go abroad. One of the reasons that they give is that they want to go and work abroad. So some of these people are highly trained, they're highly educated people, but going to work abroad. So the loss of skilled manpower to go and work in foreign countries is what we call brain drain. People moving to go and work in especially highly skilled manpower, highly trained and educated people going to work abroad. Now, brain drain is something bad because the country loses skilled manpower. These people are going for no reason, but just they are looking for greener pastures and be able to sustain their families at home. Since the current earnings in the country become more and more inadequate, so it results to brain drain, which is the movement of people. Inflation also makes planning difficult. It makes planning difficult. If you want, you can say inflation results into failure of economic planning, failure of development planning. Planning is failure. Planning is difficult because of the rising prices. The rising prices make it difficult to implement the plans because by the time the plan is being made, the prices are low. Then by the time of plan implementation, prices have increased more than expected, more than estimated. For example, if you were planning to build a hospital at 20 billion, by the time you begin buying roofing materials, the costs have tripled. So you find you are not able to implement the plan. So it makes planning difficult because of the rising prices, which make it difficult to implement what was planned. And the last step, because given quite a number of points, I want to end at 15, is that it leads to loss of confidence in the country's currency. When a country is experiencing inflation, its currency is losing value. The value for money, when we talk about the value of money, okay? Value of money, we mean the purchasing power of a unit of money. What a unit of money can buy, in terms of goods and services, that is value of money. So during inflation, the value of money reduces. And the fall in the value of money results into loss of confidence in that money. People lose trust in that money, and therefore they resort to things like barter trade. They prefer foreign currencies. It becomes common to find people who say, "I want to be paid in dollars. If you want to rent my building, it should be in dollars. It should be maybe in barter trade, a cow every month, like that, but not money, because money is losing value. So the loss of value of the currency forces people to lose confidence in that currency, and at the end of the day, they resort to barter trade, they resort to foreign currencies and other things. So those are the negative effects of inflation. The details of this work is on our platform. We have these notes, so you can refer for further explanation and then look at it, those aspects. Now, you may be asked, why is it necessary? Why is it necessary to control? Why is it necessary to control inflation in Uganda or in an economy? There will be two questions. They say, why is it necessary to control inflation in Uganda? That is a paper 2 question. Or if they say, why is it necessary to control inflation in an economy? That is a paper 1 question. But both questions require the same approach. For question, why is it necessary? Why is there a need to control inflation? There is need to control inflation, we have to be aware, because of the negative effects. But you don't bring out the effects directly. Don't bring, it's necessary to control inflation because there is loss of confidence in the country's currency. No. This is a question calling for objectives, reasons for controlling inflation. So our answer should begin with 2. Okay? Or you can say in order to. Or you can say so as to. Or you can say because of need to. So we are looking out for this. In order to. So it's a matter of playing around with these points and we generate objectives. Let me take you through and show you the example. Then possibly you can try out, because this is a higher order thinking question. It's not an ordinary question. Why is it necessary to control inflation in Uganda? We know very well that inflation worsens the unemployment problem. So you are not going to give it as an effect. The question is not calling for effects. It's calling for reasons for controlling inflation, objectives. So you say to control the unemployment problem. Simply say to control the balance of payment problem in order to reduce income inequalities, so as to control social evils or crimes, because of need to reduce the strain that people go through during inflation, like that. To encourage investment, this one will be changed. To encourage investment, we know inflation leads to industrial unrest, so it would be to reduce industrial unrest. We know inflation makes government unpopular, so we would say to increase the popularity of the ruling government, or to reduce political unrest. Then we would say so as to encourage lending, so as to encourage saving, so as to avoid the collapse of weak farms, so as to reduce consumption of poor quality goods, so as to reduce the brain drain, so as to make planning easy, or to ease planning, then to restore confidence in the country's currency. That's how we answer these questions. Why is it necessary to control inflation in Uganda? So these are the qualifiers we expect you to use to, in order to, so as to, because of, need to. This is how we expect you to handle that work. There is and you may be asked that why may increase in money supply not necessarily lead to inflation? Because it is not always the case that once there is increase in money supply, there is inflation. Why may increase in money supply not necessarily lead to inflation? Why may increase in money supply not necessarily lead to inflation? Now, when you cover money and banking, under money and banking, we have what we call the quantity theory of money, which roughly states that the general price level for goods and services is determined by the quantity of money in circulation, assuming the velocity of circulation of money and the level of transaction is constant. Now, according to the quantity theory of money, we would expect that when there is increase in money supply, definitely there is increase in the general price level. But this is not the case. It's not always the case that once there is increase in money supply, it automatically leads to increase in the general price level. Sometimes the increase in money supply does not bring about increase in the general price level. In simple language, sometimes you may have increase in money supply. They may say the government prints more and issues more money, but the prices don't increase. That's what we are saying. So this is the question. Why may increase in money supply not necessarily lead to inflation? So in other words, why may increase in money supply not necessarily lead to increase in prices of commodities? So I want us to look at a few points here. And the first one is the existence of price controls. Existence of price controls. And now, where we have the maximum price for commodities, for most commodities, the money supply may increase, but prices don't increase because government has suppressed the inflation. We have what we call suppressed inflation. With price control, the government does not allow prices to go beyond a given limit that it has set. So, increase in the money supply does not bring about increase in prices. The other point you can look at is the existence of high marginal propensity to save. Okay, existence of high marginal propensity to save. High marginal propensity to save. Marginal propensity to save is a concept under national income, which simply means the proportion of additional income that is saved. So, existence of high marginal propensity to save, the proportion of additional income that is saved. You find that in an economy where marginal propensity to save is high, the additional money supply, the increase in income, which results in increase in money supply, results in increase the savings, and therefore prices don't increase. Because now people save more, they save that money, and they don't put pressure on prices. The other one is increase in money supply accompanied by increase in output. So, where a country is, this is common where a country has unemployed resources. So the increase in money supply is accompanied, being accompanied by increase in output. So once there is an increase in output, it means that this money supply has been used to increase production and more goods are on the market. So in this situation, prices don't increase. As long as you have a lot of goods on the market, prices don't increase. And therefore, increase in money supply may not necessarily lead to inflation. The other one is where the increase in money supply is accompanied by or followed by increased importation of goods. So this increases the availability of goods in the market, and therefore prices don't increase. There are other reasons that you can look at. For example, increase in money supply being followed by reduced exportation of goods. This one increases the availability of goods in the country, and prices don't follow. We can look at taxes. The increase in money supply being followed by increased taxation, especially direct taxes, and therefore prices don't increase. So you have to know why is it that, as economists, we should know that increase in money supply will not always lead to inflation, as long as the government undertakes those necessary measures to bring about increase the production and increase the output on the market. Now, some other concepts related to inflation. And one of them, which I want people to know, is the deflation. Actually, this is the opposite of inflation. Here we are looking at the persistent fall in the general price level of goods and services in an economy. That is the deflation, persistent fall in the general price level. So here it means that prices are falling. It is also a problem because if you are an investor and you have bought, let's say you have invested in the cows, each cow you have bought at $1 million, and then prices are falling. While the cow which you bought at $1 million is now 100,000. It is a problem. You are discouraged investment and so on. So I want you to know deflation. What brings about deflation in an economy? One, a reduction in government expenditure. That one brings about deflation because now it reduces people's purchasing power. Two, restrictive monetary policy. That one reduces people's purchasing power, and therefore deflation occurs. Three, increased direct taxes. The increased direct taxes reduce disposable incomes of people, and therefore a deflation occurs. Can look at a reduction in the inflow of income from abroad. This one can also bring about a deflation. A reduction in the exportation of goods can also bring about a deflation. A deflation has negative effects. For example, it causes unemployment. People who have been engaged in production are discouraged, so resulting into unemployment. It causes a reduction in government revenue. Because now some farms close down, so government gets less revenue. The profits of the traders have reduced, so therefore expected a reduction in government revenue. The high income earners suffer during this period of deflation. When the prices are falling, it affects the high income earners most. because for them, their incomes fall greatly compared to the low-income earners. And then creditors gain. I look at it in terms of creditors gaining, because money is gaining in value. It makes people to get it restores confidence in the country's currency, among others. The second term that I want students to know is the stagflation. 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 Stagflation is simply the coexistence in an economy of high rates of inflation and high rate of unemployment. At the same time, we have these two problems. So, stagflation occurs in an economy where we have high levels of inflation coexisting with a high level of unemployment at the same time. That is stagflation. Many people make a mistake when they are defining this concept. When they say stagflation is where there is inflation and unemployment in the economy. No, we are looking at high levels of inflation coexisting with high levels of unemployment. In all countries in the world, we have inflation and unemployment, but it's not the case that all countries have these at high levels. Therefore, we cannot say all countries have the situation of stagflation. It is just a situation where these problems are at high levels. And what brings about this, the causes of inflation and those of unemployment bring about this situation of stagflation. The effects, low government revenue, low production, it results in income inequalities, among other effects. And then, how do we solve stagflation? Increase government expenditure on investment, reduce direct taxes. We can increase money supply to stimulate production, and that can bring about an end to stagflation. There is a sister concept in stagflation called stagnation. Now, when we talk about stagnation, we are looking at a period of static economic activities characterized by low or zero economic growth, low level of economic activities. So this one results in high levels of unemployment in the economy. So that is stagnation. The other effect, the other small concept that I want members to know is reflation. 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 Reflation is the deliberate government policy of forcing prices upwards in order to help an economy recover from a depression. I've already told you that a depression is a period of low level of economic activity. So, as well as stimulating the economy to recover from a depression, we have what we call it stagflation. That is it. Sorry, we have what we call reflation as a way of stimulating the economy to recover from a depression. The other concept that I want members to know as part of inflation is suppressed inflation. Suppressed inflation. I've talked about this. Suppressed inflation occurs where aggregate demand greatly exceeds aggregate supply, but the effect on prices is controlled or is minimized by price controls and rationing. So with suppressed inflation, the aggregate demand exceeds aggregate supply, but the effect on prices is minimized through fiscal and monetary policies of the government. For example, price control and rationing. For example, when we know very well that aggregate demand is greater than aggregate supply, but government comes in and says no, no one should buy more than 2 kilograms of sugar. That is rationing. You can buy a quarter, you can buy 1 kilogram, you can buy 1.5, but you are not allowed to buy 2. Because now if you buy 2, you are going to cause a shortage, others will not get. The policy of rationing is aimed at ensuring that the scarce commodities are utilized by all the people at affordable prices. As I talk now, there is very high demand for medical services, especially the treatment of corona. There is what we can call excessive demand for medical treatment because of having so many patients, and the prices, the medical prices in the hospitals have gone up. What the government may come in is to impose what is called maximum price legislation, where government says no hospital should be charging a patient more than 50,000 per day. That will be price control. Don't charge more than 50,000 per day. That is the maximum pricing legislation. The maximum price will be 50,000. Or the government can come in with a policy of rationing, where the scarce medical facilities are distributed or offered such that each person gets attended to. I want to talk about the 2 other concepts, that is the headline inflation and underlying inflation. So headline inflation and the underlying inflation. Now, when we are looking at increasing prices of commodities, remember I should know that the prices of commodities, we have different commodities. We have prices of commodities, including foodstuffs. So the persistent increase in the general price level of all goods and services, including foodstuffs, is headline inflation. This one includes prices of foodstuffs. And then underlying inflation, sometimes called core inflation, the persistent increase in the general price level, which excludes the prices of foodstuffs. Now, why do we sometimes include or exclude foodstuffs? We have what we call, you have studied this, price fluctuations in the agriculture sector. Prices of agricultural products are never stable. You find they rise and fall periodically. You find in January, matoke, a bunch was 10,000. By March, a bunch is 12 or 15. But another time you find a bunch is 20,000, like that. So prices fluctuate. Because of this fluctuation, sometimes if you want to get the true kind of inflation, what we call core inflation, then we need to exclude prices of these basic foodstuffs, because they are misleading. Sometimes the prices increase, but when they will come down when there is a harvest. So that one is it. That is it. The questions which can be set here. Let me possibly give you one sample question. A, distinguish between suppressed inflation and core inflation. Core inflation, which we have said is underlying inflation. Then part B, so this would be 4 marks. And part B, assess the impact of inflation in Uganda. Now, when we are assessing the impact, we bring out the positive and negative effects of inflation. So you find in 16 months, 8 go to positive impact and 8 on negative impact. So thank you very much for following up this lesson. We shall begin.